Welcome or welcome back to my channel, and today is a second video for generators and manifesting generators about discovering and creating our right work. Now, much of what I'm going to say today is applicable to all types, but for manifesting generators and generators, it's super significant for us to find the right work, to develop the right work, to create the right work, because we have that sacral energy that enables us to do work that's not necessarily the right work for us and just keep on going because we have a lot of energy. Whereas for non-sacral beings, it's not as easy for you to do that. So there are going to be some variations according to type, but a lot of what I'm going to share today, I think can be of value to all types. In the first part of this series, you might want to go check out that video. I really talked a lot about conditioning and the different things that can get in our way to be able to be doing our right work. And a lot of that had to do with how we are enculturated in to fit ourselves into structures that already work and all of the things that happen for us while we're in school in order to make us be ready to do that and so on. So if you haven't watched that one, I definitely recommend that you watch it. Either you pause and go watch it now or you watch it soon, because here's the thing. It's important for you to understand the conditioning that is leading you to be a certain way in your life. If you don't understand that and start to unpack that and unravel it, what happens is you try to make changes, but you're making changes from the same level of consciousness that you have always been working through or you've been working in the recent past. And so you're really hamstrung in your ability to create something new in your life. So that's why it's important, and that's why I did that other video first. Just a couple other comments about why this process can be difficult for us, what I'm going to be suggesting today. And that has to do with when we're little. For most of us, we don't have adults that are observing us, taking their time compassionately to discover what our big strengths are and what our aptitudes are and what delights us, and then to be reflecting those things back to us and then to be encouraging us to develop those and to be looking for ways we can express those in our work in the world when we grow up. Much more often, adults are out of their best intentions, helping us to go to school, to get good grades, to do the things that they were taught to succeed in their lives, and to be happy, to make money, to be independent, to have families of their own, and so on. But they're always looking through their own filter of their own experience, and they may not really be able to see the young child for what they are. I think back when we used to live in smaller communities, tribal communities of 50 to 150 people, which is how humanity has lived for the vast majority of our time on the planet, that there was a lot more of that kind of observation and a lot more of the cultivation of the natural strengths and talents and attributes of each individual, everyone being able to do what they're best at in order for the tribe to thrive. What are you naturally good at and what are you drawn to, and how can you then develop that in your life and express that? In our modern world, we have many, many more institutions, we have many more structures, and what we tend to do is look outside of ourselves into the world and ask the question, how do I fit in, right? How do I slot myself into something that already exists? How do I get a job, right? When my child was small, I remember at a very young age, there were these questions about, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of the options that were presented were very mainstream, simple. Do you want to be a firefighter? Do you want to be a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer? I mean, stuff like that. And I remember having the conversation with Sam at one point where Sam had brought this up and I had witnessed this, and I said, I think that what you are going to be or what you're going to do when you grow up probably hasn't been invented yet. Our world is growing and changing so quickly that it probably doesn't exist yet. What your father does, he was a web designer and a videographer and a video editing person, and I was doing personal growth work and coaching and doing lots of programs online. And I said, none of that was invented when I was a kid. And so for you, with a world that's even growing faster now, probably what you're going to do hasn't been invented yet. So let's just acknowledge that our world is very, very dynamic, and especially now as we're learning to live with this pandemic, coming out of it in certain ways and learning to live with it in others, the world continues to change really dramatically. And there's a lot of things that are needed in our world that haven't been developed yet, right? So I would like to invite you to consider the possibility that things are really open and available to you in a way that maybe you haven't thought about yet. I'm going to pose a series of questions to you that I invite you to journal on, to meditate on, to take with you and walk, just to mull this over so that you can be tuning inside rather than tuning outside to what's already there, tuning inside to see what's really calling to you. So what is it that inspires you? What is it that draws you? What is it that lights you up and delights you? Be curious, experiment, inquire, try things out. You third line profiles out there already know how to do that. But just hold this lightly and explore. Rather than thinking, oh, I have to be really definitive about this. I have to know right away. I have to make decisions when I'm young, or I should know by now. If I don't know by now, I'm kind of a loser. Not true. So inquire, be curious, experiment, open up possibilities. One great thing to do is to start asking generative questions. I do have a whole video about generative questions, and particularly it's geared for generators and manifesting generators, and you can go and check it out right here. But generative questions are great for all of us, whatever your type is, except maybe manifestors who have this really strong impulse from the inside. But even then, these generative questions are how we dig into possibility, and we start throwing out to the creative intelligence of the universe what we're interested in, what we're inquiring about. And you don't necessarily try to answer those questions immediately. So for generators and manifesting generators, what we would look for is to see what does the flow of life bring us that we then have to respond to. And if you're a projector, then you're going to be looking for what invitations might start coming your way. Generative questions are a great practice just in general to get into in your life. Take some time to consider what really draws you and also what drains you. Really get in touch with how you feel. Try to get out of that thinking tower and get down into your body and tune into how do you feel about different ways that you interact with the world, different activities that you do, and tune into what is it that really brings you alive. Also check in, what are you longing for? What do you yearn for? And don't just dismiss those as unrealistic. I've done lots of readings for people who have done that for big portions of their life because they were taught at some point that whatever it was that they were really interested in that was unrealistic and they couldn't make money doing it. That, is another question. But what I want to suggest is that these are messages from your soul, the parts of you that are yearning for you to express, and to really honor them and pay attention to them. Then you can ask yourself, what could you do all day and not get bored and not get exhausted? It's an interesting question, right? What would make you wake up excited every day to meet your life and to engage with whatever it is that you're doing for your work in the world? What would you like to see created in the world that hasn't been created yet? We're in a time of kind of exploding innovation, and we certainly need this in our lives. I mean, I know, I'll just give you a funny example. So I bought an e-bike last year sometime, and so it runs on a battery, and really quickly after I got it, I was like, this thing really ought to have a solar panel. on it. So I can leave it out in the sun, or when I'm out riding it, it'll be gathering, energy from the sun to feed the battery. And then later on, I was like, well, why doesn't just the drivetrain, right, of the bike recharge the battery? Like, those are kind of two no-brainer things to me that I hope somebody's going to be inventing. Now, I'm not the one who's going to invent them, because I am a consumer of that bike, right? I'm a user of that bike. I'm not an inventor. But I bet that there are things in your life that you can look at that and go, oh, that could be improved by having this be invented. And some of those might just be up your alley. So check that out. And then the last question for inquiry is, what have you been through in your life that you have learned from, and you have golden nuggets of wisdom that you could turn around and share to other people? And potentially you could support them through their journey that is similar to the one that you've already been on. This is something that people in the personal growth realm, spiritual growth realm often do. I think this is something that I do a lot myself. There are many different ways that we could go with this topic, and I'm going to focus on more if you are someone who is self-employed, you're more entrepreneurial, you're looking to do something that's really in alignment with your heart's expression, and you're wanting to create something that is very much in alignment with, with your soul and your soul yearning. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on that, but if you are somebody who works really well in a company, in a corporation, in an institution of some kind, you can still be tapping into these same questions that I just offered you, to be then thinking about, how is this desire that you have on the inside, and the things that you're good at and that you want to be doing, the things that light you up, how does that interface with the structures that already exist out there? So how can human design help? Very often people come to me wanting to know about their life purpose. And I am going to do a video very soon about life purpose. But I want to make a distinction between life purpose and your work in the world. The way that I think about this, and there's many books, people have many different opinions about this. Okay, so this is my opinion. But for me, life purpose really has to do with you and how you feel about yourself, and how you feel about why you're here on the planet and what it is that you came here to do. So that's more about your life purpose, and your contribution, okay, ideally hooks up with your work in the world, partly because we spend so much time doing our work in the world, right? And so ideally that'll hook up with what you feel is your contribution. So that's more of what I'm going to focus on in this particular video. It's more about your activity. It's more about what you're providing to others, whereas your purpose really has to do more with, it's for you, and you do contribute to others through modeling, right? Through being. But your contribution is more about what you're actually providing. Okay. So that's the distinction. So we're going to be looking at how your contribution relates to your work in the world. I'm going to focus on the Incarnation Cross, and I'm going to use my own Incarnation Cross and my own experience as an example for you that I hope will illustrate a few different things that will empower you in your inquiry. Now, let me say at the outset here that people are not formulas, okay? And you are not your human design chart. It's funny how people get confused about that. They think they actually are their chart. Now your chart can tell you many things, and it's super helpful. Obviously, I would not have become a specialist in human design if I didn't believe that. But your human design chart does not tell you how you've lived your life. And how you've lived your life is super significant for your work in the world. I've met other people with my same Incarnation Cross, and their lives have been very different from me. They're very different people than I am. And so I just want you to know that you can't take like, this is your incarnation cross and this means that this is your work in the world, or this is your purpose, or this is who you are. It's just not that simplistic. It's more complex than that. And of course, the system, it's much more complex than your incarnation cross. So the incarnation cross is just one part of the whole chart and your whole life, really, of which human design is just one aspect. Here is an image of my body graph, okay? And at the top, I've just put in this bracket what my incarnation cross is. So the incarnation cross is your conscious sun, your unconscious sun, your conscious earth, and your unconscious earth. So it's the top 4 numbers of the columns of numbers on your chart. Those in many ways are the most significant, but not entirely, I think, as you'll see as I start to unpack what's true for me. So take a look at this image now, because this is what jumps out at me immediately when I take a look at my chart. You'll see that, yes, my conscious sun is in the 61, my conscious earth is in the gate 48, but you'll also see that the 21 and the 48 are repeated in the nodes, okay? So anytime you see the numbers coming up more than once in your chart like that, you'll know that those are major themes for you, because it means that more than one of the planets is lighting up that gate. So that's a major theme. So I know immediately that the 21 and the 48 are major themes for me because they show up twice on my chart. Many people will tell you that your number 1 gate is your conscious sun, and in certain ways it is. I can tell you from my own experience that the gate 21, which in traditional human design is called control, and it's thought of as kind of the CEO of a company, right? It's somebody who knows how to manage resources, manage people, manage companies and institutions. And I definitely have the capacity to do that. And I've done it. I ran the Women's Studies program at Columbia University. I helped set up the Women's Studies program at UCSD, where I was a graduate student. I've had people who have hired me to be a consultant and also to help run parts of their companies before. But you know what? It's not my passion. It's a capacity that I have, but it is not what I think of as my work in the world. And I really resist when people have wanted me to come and do that for them. It just isn't what I feel is really true to me. But in quantum human design, the 21 has been renamed self-management, and it has a lot to do with managing your own energy. Now that I relate to much more in the sense of, for my own personal growth, learning to manage my own energy has been very, very significant. I'm an intense person. I have a lot of energy. I've really had to learn how to manage the amount of intensity that I have, both for myself so that I don't burn myself out, and also so that I'm not too intense with other people, or I'm intense at the wrong time. And so yes, self-management has been a big part of my learning in my life. And it's also something that I now do with clients that I work with, is that I help them to understand their own energy, how they can manage their energy better, how they can build their energy if they need to build their energy, how they can dissipate extra energy, how they can learn how to work with their energy bodies. This is a lot of what I do through working with Kundalini yoga with my clients. So that part I really relate to, but I am not interested in teaching other people how to manage companies or how to manage organizations or departments or anything like that. I am not interested in that really at all. So it's interesting. The quantum human design meaning relates to me much more and what I consider my work in the world than does the older traditional human design meaning. Now the gate 48, which in Traditional human design is known as depth or the well, which when I first heard that, I was really kind of perplexed. Well, what does that really mean? But the quantum human design name is wisdom. And it's all about learning. The 48 loves to learn. And this I completely relate to. It's always been true for me. I have always loved to learn. I have a PhD. I consider myself, kind of a scholar in exile as a recovering academic. But I still have a very strong scholarly side. I love to learn. I will be learning until my deathbed. I will still have a stack of books that I'm reading, when I die. And so it's something that is super vital to me. And I also consider this something that I have learned and I help pass on to my clients as well. This definitely contributes to my work in the world. And I would say that that was definitely more something I was aware of from an early age as part of being my work in the world, right? That's why I went to graduate school, to become a professor, to teach other people, to help them develop their knowledge and their wisdom, and to be able to contribute to the larger field of scholarship that I was a part of. So for me, in terms of how I think of this as my right work, definitely my 21, which is my conscious sun, and the 48, which is my conscious earth, are both contributors to my work in the world and my right work. It's taken me a long time to discover how they contribute to my right work, though. Not so much the 48, but definitely the 21. It's evolved over time. Let's go back and look at the Incarnation Cross for a moment and move to the other side with the red numbers. So my unconscious sun is lighting up the my unconscious sun is lighting up the gate 38, and my My unconscious sun is lighting up the gate 38, and my unconscious earth is lighting up the gate 39. Now, I'm going to come back to the gate 38 a little bit in a moment to go into it in a little bit of a different context. But I just want to say here that this gate 38, which colloquially in human design is known as the Martin Luther King gate, in traditional human design it's known as the gate of the fighter, and in quantum human design it's known as the visionary leader. I relate to that very much, and I have always related to that. I think that there has been an element of taking stands for what I believe in throughout my entire life. And so very much I relate to that. And certainly it influenced my work in the world as a scholar, doing the work that I did as a professor. And it has also influenced what I've done during all of the different businesses that I've created since I left them. Whereas the 39, which is its provocation, I think is more as an attribute of my personality. I don't really think of it as part of my work in the world so much, although it is something that I think I probably utilize in my coaching practice. But I wouldn't have ever said I wanted to create work in the world around that particular quality. It's more something that I call on in the work that I already do. Whereas with the 38 and that visionary leader, and that has come on even more strong recently for me in the last couple of years, to really step into that and to be working with that. And I'm calling on the energy of that 48, the wisdom that I've developed over the course of my life, and really put those two together. So those are the two parts of my Incarnation Cross that I relate to the most in terms of my work in the world. And then the self-management of the 21 is also coming in here more recently. So for you, when you're looking at your own Incarnation Cross, those top 4 numbers, and you're looking at what the gates are for that, to be leaning into what genuinely feels true to you. I have talked to people who really don't relate a whole lot to their conscious sun energy. It just doesn't resonate. I don't necessarily think that means that there's something wrong with them or that they were just conditioned away from it. There may be elements of that, but there may be other aspects of your Incarnation Cross that you relate to more than that particular one. I want to help give you permission to know that you can have your own interpretations based in your life experience about what's true for you. My guess is that you will find attributes in your Incarnation Cross that you do resonate with and do make sense to you, and that you can tap into as you're thinking about, what do I want to have be my right work in the world? What is the environment I want to be in? What do I want to be doing every day? Who are the people I either want to be working with, if they're going to be clients or participants in programs of yours, or if you're going to be working on projects with teams in a company, things like that. You want to be looking at, how can you be bringing your own superpowers, because we all have superpowers in our Incarnation Crosses, right? Is how can I be bringing that out into my work in the world? And if you're in a situation where you feel that those aspects of your Incarnation Cross, there's no place for them to be expressed, then you're probably not in the right place. Another part of my chart that has been really helpful for me to understand myself better, and that has actually liberated me in terms of my work in the world, even more than in the past, was looking at my circuitry. Now, the image that you're looking at right now is an image that on the left-hand side, you'll see that it has the different circuits that are listed there. But what I want you to see on mine is how much the knowing circuit right there is dominant in my chart, okay? And then the two different circuits that are underneath there, there's the integration circuit and the centering circuit. All of those, there are 16 different activations in those, in that individual circuitry. And when I learned that about myself, it really changed my understanding of what I'm here to do, what I'm here to provide, how my work in the world will unfold. And what the first part with the knowing circuit was, it really helped me to completely own my intuition. Intuition is all over my chart. And yet throughout my early years, until I left academia, actually, I really wasn't using my intuition all that much. It was really in the later part of my life, that after I left the academy, that I started to develop and work with my intuition. But it's always been a core part of who I am that I suppressed for a long time. So one of the things you might look at is what is happening with your circuitry, and if you have a lot of individual circuitry, and particularly a lot of intuition. Because individual circuitry is mutative. It's here to be different. It doesn't fit in. If you have a lot of that, you will probably struggle trying to make yourself fit in to a work situation, particularly if it's a rigid one where there's a lot of rules and your job description is, very set, and you're not getting to innovate and contribute because you're a natural innovator and you're going to be receiving a lot of information and downloads that can help to change things in the world. So you want to be able to look for opportunities for you to be able to do that. And for me, I really have to have my own business. I mean, I have tried on occasion to work more closely with other people, particularly if I'm working for them. I can collaborate with the right people, but when I'm working for them, it just totally doesn't work for me. So you can look at that for yourself. Whereas if your circuitry is more tribal or more collective, it might be easier for you to do that. More tribal, working in smaller groups, creating tribal environments. If you are working for yourself, collect a lot of collective energy. You might be able to work in big institutions. You could work in government. You could work in corporations. You could work in large nonprofits. You could work in different environments that involve a lot of people. The next two things I want to share with you are here. You can see in this image, they're all the way at the bottom of the numbers that are with my body graph. And you can see here that Neptune is lighting up the gate 28, both in the red numbers and in the black numbers. And that Pluto is lighting up the gate 59, both in the red numbers and the black numbers. So again, when you see those numbers repeated 2 or more times, you know that those are major themes for you. So if you have that in your chart, you might want to go and take a look at what those are. Let's talk about the gate 28. So the gate 28 in traditional human design is known as the gate of struggle. And in quantum human design is known as the gate of challenge or opportunity. Now, this is an energy that I have definitely danced with throughout my life. And because Neptune is lighting it up, it's a little bit murky. It's a little bit dreamy. It's in the unconscious. And so it's something that I've had to really learn how to grab a hold of and work with in my life. But I have gained great wisdom from working with that gate 28 because I know now how to take incredible, challenging situations and turn them into things that I can learn through and that I can then turn around and provide to other people. I love the most recent interpretation of this energy that Karen Curry Parker has created, which is really to think of this as an energy of adventure. And I interpret that as being on the leading edge of consciousness, which very much relates to my own mutative individual circuitry. Now, the 28 is individual circuitry, but it's something that really resonates for me and really works for me. So you might want to look again about where you have different gates that are lit up more than once. Now, this one is just one planet, but it's over a period of time. So it's both in the red and the black numbers. Below that, you'll see that Pluto's lighting up the gate 59. And in traditional human design, the gate 59 is known as sexuality. And in quantum human design, it's known as sustainability. These feel like really different interpretations to me. And I would say that earlier in my life, I related more to the sexuality piece. I grew up, during the time of free love, and I, became sexual when I was a teenager. And, I really experimented a lot with that, particularly earlier in my life. And then the sustainability piece is something that I'm very aware of. Now, Pluto is the god of the underworld and is all about engaging with something, and then it breaks down. It's kind of like Phoenix energy, right? Where it burns down and then it's reborn. And I really get this about sustainability because I have been unsustainable in my life. Before I came to human design, I was definitely unsustainable. I burned out multiple times because I didn't really know any better. Didn't know how to live as a generator. So for me, being able to create sustainability in my own life has been a huge benefit for me, but it's also something that I am now contributing to in terms of different aspects of what's going on in our world today. I do whatever I can in my home environment to do things that are more sustainable. I also teach this to my clients. I encourage them to become more sustainable, both through that, that 21 energy, which is that self-management of their own energy, but also to be looking at what are they doing in their lives? What are their practices? And are there different changes that they want to see happen in the world towards greater sustainability that they can contribute to, whether they're contributing their time or their money or their energy? There's many different ways that we can contribute. So I see both of these energies of the 28 and the 59 as influencing very much on my learning curve in my life that has now influenced what I do for my right work in the world, because it's through having to learn them, really both of them through a lot of challenge, that I now feel that I have something valuable that I can offer and teach to others. I have one more section that I want to offer to you that might feel a little bit controversial. It's definitely a bit different than the way you probably have heard other people talk about human design. This has to do really with definition and openness. So a little while ago, I mentioned the gate 38, right, which is defined in my chart, and my unconscious sun is there. And that is a leadership gate, right? It's been named as the visionary leader. And I also have in my chart the gate 7 and the gate 21, which I mentioned before. And they are the mates of the two other major leadership gates in the chart. So the 7 is the mate of the 31, which is democratic leadership. And the 21 is the mate of the 45, which is natural leadership. One of the things you'll see that's presented as a negative expression of the 7 is as if you try to be the leader yourself, rather than supporting the leader. So that's the idea is the 7 supports the leader. The kind of traditional human design way of thinking of this is that the 7 is the chief of staff of the president, but isn't the president. Okay. And in quantum human design, it's a little more dialed down than that because it's a collaboration, and democratic leadership also has to do with collaboration. But what I want to say is that the mates of gates that you have that where the other side is open, right? It's not defined in your chart. That's called a hanging gate. So it's an electromagnetic, right? So my 7 is always going to be seeking out the energy of the 31, and my 21 is always going to be seeking out the energy of the 45, right? Because I want those channels to be defined so that all of my energy starts moving, right? So what happens is that over the course of my life, in seeking out that energy, I take in that energy of the 31 and I amplify it. And with the 45, I take in that energy and I amplify it. And because I have amplified it, I actually may know that energy even better than I do of the ones that are defined. Okay. So for me, being in a position like with the 21 of supporting somebody else's business, being the CEO of somebody else's business. I was hired to be the director of a major program inside of, one of the biggest kind of evolutionary online educational companies that there are. Okay. I was hired to be a director and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It just did not work for me. So I'm not designed really in my heart of hearts to be that CEO or to be that chief of staff. I need to be the person who is leading my life and leading my business. That's what works for me. I can have creative partners. I can collaborate, which is the 7. Absolutely. But I also need to be the leader in my own life. And so it's not just in the 38, but I really relate both to the 31 and the 45 as well. The reason I mention this is that you may think that aspects of your chart that are not defined, that means they're not colored in, are not energies that you have strongly in your chart, but they might be. There's a lot of different reasons for that. And at some point, I'm going to write a freaking book about openness because I have a lot to say about it. But I just want you to know that you may really relate to some of the energies that are white in your chart, particularly if it's an electromagnetic, right? It's the other side of a hanging gate. One of the funny things about me is that I only have one gate that's defined in the sensing circuit, the gate 33, which is a storytelling gate. It's the only one. And yet I have spent a huge part of my life focused on embodiment, which is in the sensing circuit, opening up my right brain, my creativity, things like my painting, right? My writing, my dancing, so many parts of my life. I have really developed my creativity, my artistry. And I don't have any definition except for this one gate in the sensing circuit, which is where you would think you would find that. So again, you don't have to have it defined in your chart in order for it to play a key role in your life. Like for me, embodiment is something that I am teaching clients all the time now. How do you get in your body? Now I'm doing it with that energy of that gate 21 too, which is working with your energy, learning how to manage your energy. But it really is about that love of the body, which is in the sensing circuit, the gate 46, and it's in other parts of the sensing circuit too. But it's not defined in my chart. The last example I want to give you of this is that I have an open throat. I've only got 2 gates defined on my throat. I've got the 33, which I just mentioned, and the 12, which is known as the gate of the channel, which is in the knowing circuit, which is, again, part of my intuition. But I have this open throat, and that has been a challenge for me, absolutely, with the things we know about open throats, the tendency to blurt, sometimes the difficulty with being able to speak at all, or talking nonstop and not knowing when to stop, not being heard, trying to get attention, all that. That has definitely been true for me at parts of my life. But it's also a huge attribute for me because I have been able to take in other people's energies and amplify it in many, many different ways. I have 10 different hanging gates going to my throat. So I've been able to define my throat many, many different ways over and over and over again. So it's actually a superpower for me now because I can do different things with my throat. I can do different forms of communication because I can switch between different kinds. It's definitely a teaching aspect for me. There's teaching all over my chart. And so this is another thing that I've had throughout my life. I'm sharing all of these examples from my own experience with you because I want you to be able to look at human design and see all of the different ways that it can help you understand yourself better and what it is that you can then provide in the world in terms of your contribution and the activities that you can be doing every day. When I really got this about my open throat, it helped me expand my understanding. For example, doing all of these videos, right? Right now, I don't have anybody here that's defining my throat, but because I can imagine you and I can imagine the situations when I've taught before and I've been with others, I can call on that energy now and I can use that when I'm doing these videos. You have that ability to do that with different aspects of your chart as well. Remember, you have the whole chart. So if you know your chart really well, my suggestion is that you really tune into what do you feel you're really good at? What have you developed in your light? How does that relate to your Incarnation Cross? How does it relate to places where you have a gate double or triple or even quadruple defined, right? It shows up, the number shows up multiple times. And think about those attributes for you. And are those things that you would love to bring into your work in the world? Because those are definitely aspects that are superpowers for you. If you have major themes for you, places that are double or more defined, your Incarnation Cross, but then also look at what are some of the aspects of the chart that you just really resonate with. You know, like for me, this whole piece about embodiment, I really resonate with that, even though it's not defined in my chart. If you don't know your chart so well, my suggestion is not to get too hung up with all of the specifics that I just mentioned, okay? Go back to those questions that I brought up earlier that were about suggestions for to open up your inner exploration, and then the questions for inquiry, and see for yourself where that inquiry can lead you. Because even just using those questions can help you understand if you're doing the right work. And if you're not doing the right work, then how can you start to create that right work for you? How can you create a vision in which you get to express these attributes of yourself, these strengths, these superpowers that you've developed over the course of your life and that you were given in your human design that will help you to lead a life that is deeply satisfying, where you do feel like you're making the contribution that you came here to make, that you're helping to create the change that you want to see in the world, and that you know that you really came here to do what you came here to do. I really believe that every single one of us is needed to be doing that in the world right now. We need to liberate ourselves from being in jobs and situations where our souls are being crushed and our energy is being drained and that we're just really leading half lives. I invite you to take even more command in your life and start to develop the work that really is the right work for you. That's it for today. Many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.